This is Hextraction, the 3D printed physics-based board game for makers, modders, and masterminds. Lay down tiles that team with tricks, traps, and tiny technology to try and take your steel ball to the finish line.
That's how you win!
Let's go! With the board.
It's half mousetrap, half magic, and half Calvin ball, and the best part, Hextraction is absolutely free. It's free as in free to play. The tiles, boards, and more are yours right now, links below. It's free as in free for all. Challenge yourself, duel a friend, or duel all your friends. Most importantly, Hextraction is free as in freedom. If your idea fits a 50mm hexagon, you can probably print it and pwn your pals with it. So ladies, gentlemen, cyborgs, and gamers, depress your download buttons, feed your favorite filaments, and grab your balls, because we're about to crash through the controlled chaos that I call Hextraction. You may be watching this because someone wants to play against you, and out of respect for your taste in friends and games, let's jump right into the rules. One player provides a game board and a pile of steel balls, and anyone can shuffle their own tiles into the shared pool. If you brought your own tiles, you can choose 3 ahead of time to be your starting hand. If not, draw 3 tiles at random. Each turn, you roll a ball and play a tile. You decide whether to play first or roll first, but you gotta do both, and once you do, your turn is done. Draw tiles till you have 3, and the next player is up. To roll, just grab a ball, pick any ramp, and let her rip. If your ball falls through an open slot, nothing happens. If you manage to get a ball to the end zone to extract it from the hexagons, game over. You have won Hextraction. If a ball leaves the board any other way, destroy the last tile it touched. If a ball gets stuck on a tile, leave it. Then if 3 or more balls are now touching that tile, you can destroy any tile any of them are touching. If the same tile gets touched 3 times in one roll, destroy that tile too. Destroy doesn't mean like smash it with a hammer, it just means remove it from the game. Tiles should always bottom out with no resistance. If it doesn't seem to fit, it probably doesn't work in that orientation. So pull it out, give it a turn, and try again. Some tiles have moving parts. You can set these in any position as you play the tile. Others have stars. These mean special effects, so if you see one, ask the tile's owner for its rules card. As the board fills up, so do the tactics and the chaos. The tactic chaos. If you want to play a tile, but there aren't any open slots for it, you can destroy a tile to make room. If the pool ever runs out of tiles, the game ends in a stalemate. Because Hextraction is a physical game, weird stuff can happen. And look, that's okay. If your ball flies off a tile and lands in the end zone, it still counts, you still win. If a tile falls off the board, it's destroyed. If a mechanism sticks, c'est la vie. Resist the urge to go around and mess with it. There's only one exception. If you're rolling for your turn and another ball gets knocked loose, it counts as if you rolled it yourself. But if a ball gets released any other way, it can't activate effects, it can't win the game, and it doesn't destroy tiles if it gets stuck or falls off the edge. Otherwise, players would be incentivized to accidentally, kick the table. To repeat, balls only affect the game between when a player starts a roll and when the last effect resolves. Finally, if you ever think a tile is unfair, you can call a vote to destroy it. If a simple majority say nay, or if there's a tie, destroy the tile and immediately cancel all its effects. If this ruins someone's play, they get to draw a replacement tile and get a do-over. And that's pretty much it. There are some other nitty-gritty interactions that are just too rules lawyerly to list here, so if a fight breaks out, go to playhextraction.com for the full scare quotes official rulebook, along with errata, rulings, design guides, strategy articles, and the rules for single-player solitaire if you want to challenge yourself. Sometimes a man's just gotta take his balls into his own hands. If you just came to get the game, head to the description, download the free files, and make with the printin'. Just remember to keep the video rolling in the background so I get that algorithmic juice. Of course, let me know if anything goes terribly wrong, or terribly right. Every game needs a patch or 1,000 to reach its true potential. Oh, and stay tuned. I just realized Gen Z thinks that's a figure of speech, as I think today's sponsor is Things.com and Inland Filament. Things.com isn't just a free warehouse of printable models. It is an entire 3-dimensional tool chest. When you search things, you also search their competitors, and if they host the file, you're searching the geometry itself to find other printable things you might have overlooked. Everything has an interactive 3D preview that loads instantly with one-click downloads, no waiting. You can download anything as an STL STL, OBJ, step file, or more, no matter how it was uploaded. Things is even better if you're a creator. If you ever need some motivation, their contests and leaderboards are worth thousands of dollars in gift cards every month, not milligrams of filament funny money. I've hosted all my Hextraction files on things.com along with pretty much everything else I've ever made, so use the links below to support the channel and mooch my hard work at the same time. I'd also like to thank Inland Filament, Micro Center's pleasingly priced plethora of premium printable plastics, who provided a positively preposterous pile of Piscetti for this project. You don't need to print every tile in a different color, but you could. And Inland has over 400 combos of materials and colors online on Amazon and in MateSpace at Micro Center. Unless I say otherwise, everything in this episode was printed in Inland PLA+, and I've linked my very favorites in the description. Inland also graciously shared their table at the 2023 Rocky Mountain RepRap Festival, so I could test the beta version of my game at the revoltingly abbreviated ERMRF. The only prints to take any damage at ERMRF were the pachinko tiles, whose pegs were not made of Inland filament. Coincidence? I'm contractually obligated to think not. Over 3,000 ERMRF printing nerds had a chance to challenge yours truly. And within literal minutes, they had hardlocked the game, bent the rules a dozen new ways, and somehow used a defective X tile like a ramp to win by accident. If you downloaded the sneaky April Fool's Gridfinity 2.0, you don't need to reprint any tiles, but I do strongly recommend reprinting the board. Hextraction has been a long time in the making. In 2016, I entered a game design hackathon called Game Smash and created Landfall Saga. I think one of the judging criteria was flavor, since I gave it this cringerific fantasy theme. It actually ended up winning a charmingly hacktastic 3D printed trophy that's still buried somewhere in my moving boxes. This came as a bit of a surprise, since Landfall Saga was kinda hot, sweaty booty ass. Not every tile worked in every orientation, and many of them didn't work at all, so players kinda got frustrated when their plays didn't play out the way they thought they'd play. Honestly, the whole game was kind of frustrating, in part because I surrounded the finish line with instant death. If you're a longtime viewer, you may have spotted this board in my April Fool's Wizardry video. I stripped off the stupid lettering and added a tacky wood veneer to use it as a prop. Otherwise, I never really touched Landfall Saga again. Till years later, when I released a 3D printed organizer system called Gridfinity, and was stunned to see an entire community spring up, making, and more importantly, modding my middling models. When the inaugural ERMRF was announced, I realized the time had come to dust off my technically award-winning board game and shove that lightning right back in the bottle. The point I'm trying to make here is that I did not rip off Gravitrax. Landfall Saga predates Gravitrax by over 2 years. I swear on this bulging bag of balls, if one more of you accuses me of ripping off Gravitrax, I will find where you live, I will kick down your door, and then I will leave because a busted door is punishment enough. Landfall Saga was partially laser cut, and I designed it in OpenSCAD because I was going through some stuff at the time and it was a form of self-harm. But I've redone everything in Fusion 360. You can make a Hextraction setup with nothing but free software, filament, and balls. I sized the game around 10mm steel bearings. But those patriots who'd rather suck Bud Light through a straw than use Satan's commie units can instead buy 3/8" slingshot ammo at the local kill and shit supply store. You'll also need glue. I strongly recommend Zap-A-Gap because it's really good for PLA and it is insanely powerful. It only takes a single drop of Zap-A-Gap to permanently glue this nickel to my workbench. I've made a huge mistake. This is my core set, over 24 tiles designed to give both players and creators a solid starting point. I went a little mad with power when I designed Gridfinity, and that habit is not going to get broken today. Let me show you them. First, we got the basic tiles. These are just tracks, no funny business. I've created 7 versions, I guess technically 8, each of which link different sides together. The indexing notches ensure that a top edge is always connected to a bottom edge, so gravity can keep players from accidentally making impossible paths. Feel free to whip up those forbidden versions. You are the Mafia Don of your hexagon. I strongly recommend putting at least one basic tile in your deck for each fancy tile. The game will grind to a halt if there are too many effects to keep track of. Here are some fan-made ones I got at ERMRF. Eric zhuzhed up a simple line with a topological map of the convention center, and Mr. Pancake did the Y tile that I forgot to bring in from Landfall Saga. He also made this neat randomizer and this wild zigzag tile, which turns out to have really awesome gameplay. I took the liberty of smoothing out the corners and flipping the S into a figure Z, the third greatest letter of them all. Number 2 is the capital Amogus, number 1 is the lowercase Amogus. I don't remember who gave me this custom tile, and I forgot to ask what it does, but it sure looks cool. But Scott here took the cake. He coated the secret Void Star tile in a thin film of titanium using a plasma chamber. That's metal. Next we have the trap tiles. These capture the first ball that enters each path and let the rest pass through. Trap tiles let you spend multiple turns setting up a path the next player can't use first. They're critical parts of two-player strategy. Don't forget, tiles are physical objects. If you come in too hot, the ball might bounce right out of the trap, and if you're moving too slow, a second ball might get hung up on the first one. A third ball can then knock the second ball loose, probably having the polar opposite effect of what you intended. Next up is the pachinko tile, featuring little pegs made of filament snippets. This obnoxious bastard randomly sends balls going down 3 different passages, making for occasionally infuriating, but often amusing variants. My absolute favorite play in the entire game is dropping a pachinko tile on the ramp slot turn 1 to enforce mandatory chaos. Just learned from my Irmurf mistakes. PLA pegs are too brittle, so use ABS, ASA, PETG, or best of all, nylon. PETG and nylon are actually the optimal choice for all tiles if you can use them. For a more predictable effect, reach for the flipper tile. This sends a ball down alternating passages, making it a key component of long-term strategy, and probably the most important tile in the game. This was the only mechanical tile in Landfall Saga, and I have massively overhauled the design to make it far more reliable, if I may toot my own tutor. Still, if I were to redesign any tile from scratch, it would be this one. It's one of the few pieces to need a non-printed component, and it's gonna jam if either passage is blocked. Maybe you're the hero who'll save the flipper tile. When you play a mechanical tile, you can set it up any way you want, so you get to decide if this thing directs balls to the left or right first. Just remember, if you want the ball to roll a specific direction, play the tile after rolling for your turn. I've also prepared an alternate version with a detachable cover that shrouds it in mystery. Why? So players confuse it with the other secret tiles. These are just like the basics, except once the cover is on, they look identical. After you pop the top to see what you got, you can snap it back in any orientation to throw off your opponents. Protopasta gave me some awesome metallic PETG, and I could not resist making these Riddler themed. I hope no one makes a bat tile. Speaking of driving myself insane, allow me to introduce the Sozu tile, inspired by the traditional Japanese garden water fountain koi pond scarecrow thing. It's the bamboo tube that fills up with water and goes boonk. The first ball to enter the Sozu tile gets trapped. The second tips the balance, causing the mechanism to flip over and release both balls. Both do count, so you get some multi-ball madness that destroys tiles faster, defeats flippers, and charges through traps. The tile then resets itself and looks very cool while doing it. At least it's supposed to. I went through over 4 dozen iterations of this thing trying to make it work reliably, and I'm like 80% sure I got it. It needs a ball bearing to reduce friction, so it's far from pure filament, and that filament absolutely must be PETG. I used another reel I got at Irmurf, Copper, with me from Filamenta. I do not get the joke of that name. Inland Marketing Department, I promise I will stop promoting your competitors now. But just in case the Sozu jams anyways, I used a ball as the counterweight, so the 3-ball rule will immediately get it off the board. If at first you don't succeed, destroy the evidence. I think 2 balls are better than 1, so I also created the clone tile. It's our first tile with a star, meaning begun, the special effects have. If you put a star tile into the pool, you also need to bring a physical rules card for other players to read. I made mine all fancy, but all it has to have is the tile's name, its effects, and a picture of it. I know the landscape layout is going to trigger you fart suckers, but it holds more text, and I want to make the letters as 3D printable as possible. Note the little jaggies on the tile. This indicates a trigger, and if a ball touches this area, it activates the effect. In this case, you roll another ball down the 100% non-phallic ramp. Like the Sozu tile, this is great for power plays, and it may even be better since you get to trigger it yourself the turn you play it. Let's check out some more effect tiles. This is the tile with nothing, a mildly esoteric Magic the Gathering reference, and an example of a self-explaining piece. You don't need a rules card if you put the rule on the tile itself. Taps forehead. You could also just write the rule with Sharpie or use a label maker. Just don't put the rules text on the bottom of the tile. How the hell are players going to read it once it's installed? Note the outline star. This means the effect only activates a single time as the tile is played. The tile with nothing makes you discard your hand, which implicitly lets you draw 3 fresh tiles once your turn ends. When you're designing tiles, you really want to make the effects one-shots or triggers. Anyone who's played multiplayer Magic knows how few ongoing static effects it takes before the entire game degenerates into an obnoxious rules lawyer minefield. I deliberately did not create any tiles with static effects, and neither should you. This is the Red Hot Steel Ball tile, or RHSBT. It superheats any ball that passes through, causing it to immediately destroy any tile it gets stuck on. It's a great way to break log jams and generally speed the game up. The rules card tells you to blow on the ball to cool it off, but this is just for fun. Tiles can never reward or punish you for doing anything out of game. Otherwise, we'll have buy me a drink tiles, hokey pokey tiles, chaos orb style physical challenge tiles, and those are the ones I can say on YouTube. I printed a few of these tiles in 2 colors to make them show up better on camera, but you don't need to. You can print the entire set from a single reel if you feel like it. This has taken a while, so let's pick up the pace. The Void tile puts a black hole on the board that scatters balls and eventually gobbles one up. Its limit rule restricts when you can play it, so remember to read that card. The holographic tile frame lets you play another tile after falling through an open slot and turns the game into a Benny Hill cluster as everyone railroads each other off the board. The gear tile lets you rotate adjacent pieces, which can open new passages and release balls from trap tiles. Remember, it still counts as rolling until you resolve every effect triggered by that roll. Do you want a frustrating tile full of ball trapping nooks and crannies? Why not Zoidberg? You can glue magnets to the eyes for bonus carcinization. The jerk tile swaps itself with a neighbor and encourages, but cannot require you to apologize. The seek tile lets your steel ball spin up a specific tile.
Is that a JoJo reference? Woo! JoJo, baby!
The bomb tile explodes when destroyed and takes surrounding tiles with it. Originally, the balls had to be inside to trigger the explosion, but the Hextraction channel on my Discord wanted chain reactions, and now they get chain reactions. Discord.gg/voidstarlab. I actually read it. The final tiles are the most advanced because they combine mechanisms and effects to do the craziest stuff. I spent way too much time on these, and I'm gonna make you watch me talk about them. The tile built for 2 is a chunky monkey with engraved text reading simply "Open me." When you do, you'll discover this is actually 2 tiles in 1. There is no faster way to reach the end zone, at least not yet. I have to edit this tile to say "open me" or not, since it turns out to still work when it's closed. Yeah, in retrospect, this is probably the wildest tile I've ever designed and really shows how far you can push the format. In order to make sure every piece will fit the board, my rules say that as you play the tile, it has to fit in the 50mm hexagon, but it doesn't say it has to keep fitting it afterwards. If you design a tile like this, give the parts a lot more wiggle room than you think, like 2mm. Other people's boards might put more or less distance between the tiles than yours. If you played the Hextraction beta at Urmurf, you saw this tile, the teleporter tile. I designed this thing to hold 3 balls so I could give it out as sort of a starter kit. In retrospect, am I ever glad this was the only effect tile in the bin? The teleporter tile doesn't just have a fleeting non-copyright infringing resemblance to a certain first-person puzzler. It's got an average Yu-Gi-Oh card's worth of rules text. This is a 2-in-1 combo tile, so as you play it, you split apart the pieces and lay both down at once. If either half of a combo tile leaves the board, grab any copy of its counterpart owned by the same player, put them back together, and carry on. When a ball lands on the in tile, it triggers the effect. You pick up the ball and then roll it on any out tile. If multiple teleporters are on the board, you don't need to remember which connect to which. Any in tile can jump to any out tile. This makes the teleporter the only reliable way to move a ball up the board. Not the only way, the only reliable way. We'll get to these fudpuckers in a hot second. I added a rule that forces you to play the out tile on a higher row than the in tile. Otherwise, you play it right in front of the finish line and it becomes an I win tile. At Urmurf, the teleporter tile alone was responsible for more rulings, corner cases, and overall shenanigans than every other tile combined. It is a shenanigan factory, and you people are the kings of shenanigans. Speaking of, this is the king tile. Another tall boy that features a fully printable spring-loaded turnable knob. When your ball hits the trigger, you pick up the entire tile and move it to an adjacent slot, ball and all, then twist the knob to send it on its way. Originally this was the en passant tile, but classy people don't watch my channel. Feel free to change the icon on the knob and write up your own movement-based rules. It's a pretty versatile design. I wasn't going to make our final tile at all. In fact, no one should make this tile at all. It isn't going to work most of the time, and it can kind of physically injure you the rest of the time. But this thing was requested so often at Urmurf, and with such generous bribery, I couldn't not do it. This is the launcher tile. The launcher tile has one simple rule. When triggered, pull back the tab and release it to physically fire the ball. No other tile makes a ball leave a top edge at high speed. This means very few tiles will do anything if a ball enters the bottom side at high speed. Still, this lets you pull some extremely cursed plays and occasionally blow a neighboring tile right off the board. I gotta say, making an opponent fall off the board is fun, but forcing them to fire it off is magnificent. This is a single model with a print-in-place slider, and I am very proud of how it turned out. You need a well-tuned printer, some low-friction filament, a touch of grease, a spring from McMaster, and a game night free of toddlers, drunk adults, and anyone else prone to looking down a loaded weapon. I forgot to mention this earlier, but you don't have to print every tile. You can build your pool out of any tiles you want. But with all this variety, it can be hard to decide where to begin, so I have prepared a starter kit to get you going. Print 2 each stars, peace signs, DICs, teleport tiles, and clone tiles. 4 each, DCs, X's, double traps, and triple traps. Print 6 flip-flops and 2 each of all 4 secret tiles along with lids. The flip-flops are easy to assemble. Just insert a bolt, add a washer, screw it down, and make sure you leave it a little loose. This is a balanced mix of straightforward and strategic for 2 players with only 2 effects to keep track of. If you don't have M3x8 screws and M3 washers, you can replace those tiles with an even mix of pachinko and king tiles. If your opponents are on the younger side, the special tiles might be a little too complicated. Consider swapping them out for Sozu tiles. If your group is veterans of card games like Magic, try replacing the peace signs, X's, stars, and 2 of the double traps with 3 each red hot tiles, king tiles, bomb tiles, and gear tiles. Finally, if you plan to play with more than one opponent, add 1 more of each tile for each additional player, and consider swapping the trap tiles for Sozus and bombs. No matter which set you settle on, don't forget to print rules cards. I designed these to print with a 0.4mm nozzle, and you can change filament at the first layer after the 2mm mark to make the lettering stand out. Or just, blast the whole thing with a Sharpie. To make a basic game board, print a 515 plate, a 57 plate, 5 basic clips, and 2 each basic on-ramps, off-ramps, basic leg mounts, and 50mm basic leg segments, or legments. You're also going to need a pair of foot mounts and feet. If you have a Gridfinity drawer full of metric hardware, print the M4 heatset version. If not, print the one with the integrated threads. This creates a 22-slot board on which 2 players can get about 10 minutes of strategic silliness per game. But I also prepared an improved version if you have more filament and more time to burn. It adds gutters and makes the legs detachable, and it looks at least 69% cooler. I couldn't finish the gutters in time, so they just kind of fling the ball out the front of the board, but honestly I kind of like it better that way. If you want to do this version, print the same boards, same finish lines, and same feet, but instead of the rest, print 17 gutter segments, 3 end caps, and 2 each gutter on-ramps, leg sockets, leg starters, gutter foot mounts, and 50mm gutter leg segments. Apply glue to the tab side of one plate, push them together on the table upside down with the indexing tabs facing yourself, then add clips or gutters to connect them together. If you've chosen to be fancy, add the rest of the gutters, stick end caps here, here, and here, and glue leg mounts to the corner gutters. While that sets, build the legs. If you're doing the heat set nuts, set them now, ideally with heat, and jam a screw through each foot. Those might need a little touch of glue to keep them in place. Glue the 3 leg pieces together, and while everything sets, contemplate whether cutting a burrito in half creates a pair of bread bowls. Then screw the feet in all the way. Glue the on-ramps to the board, brace them while the glue sets, then glue on the finish lines. And if you're doing the simple version, glue the legs to the corner slots. If you're going deluxe, insert the legs and pin it in place with M4 screws. Adjust the feet to get everything as level as possible, and blast it with accelerator, because waiting is for chumps. You know what else is for chumps? Bread bowls. That's why I bite the ends off both sides of the burrito. Finding, printing, and collecting tiles is one of the best parts of Hextraction, but the real fun starts when you design your own. These are really easy first projects, and as long as you thoroughly test what you make and follow the 3 great rules of great tiles, you'll probably end up with something fun. I heard that's why people play games. The full rules are on the website, so I'm only going to run through them quickly here. Rule 0. Okay, fine, there are 4 rules of tiles, it's a programmer's 3. Tiles cannot break section 0 of the official rules. These are meta rules that unstick the game when a problematic tile hits the board. So of course we can't let tiles override them, because then you can't get rid of crappy tiles. Just read section 0 and you'll be fine. Rule 1. Tiles cannot damage the board, other tiles, or the players themselves. Also, don't put a tile into the game unless you're okay with other players handling and possibly ruining it. Rule 2. Tiles cannot lock other players out of playing tiles, rolling balls, drawing, or making decisions for more than one consecutive turn. Players want to play the game. Players can vote to nullify tiles and effects. They'll refuse to lose on a technicality, and if they get bored of getting stuck in the same tile over and over again, they'll just get rid of it. Rule 3. Nothing outside the game can affect inside the game and vice versa. Examples. A tile can't let you re-roll if your name is Zack. It can't make you lose life unless you give the owner $1. And it can't make you skip your turn if you refuse to bark like a dog. Any player should be able to fully utilize every tile and keep their dignity intact. At least some of it. To sum it up, tiles should not stall the game, they should respect other players, and should be thoroughly tested to make sure they reliably physically function. When designing written effects, remember to include a rules card with the tile's picture, name, and text. Ideally it's 3D printable, but if it's 2D printable, that's fine too. One-shots and triggers are infinitely better than ongoing effects. I am serious, do not make ongoing effects. Above all, keep it short and simple. My core set includes the keywords on play, trigger, discard, destroy, notch, limit, and combo, so use them because players will already know what they do. I wrote a few more of these keywords for forward compatibility. Overwrite means destroy a played tile to play another in its spot, even if the board isn't full. Overdrive effects only fire if every slot in the board is full. Offline effects are only applied if a powered tile is played on a non-powered board. Of course I'm going to add electronics to the board. Who do you think you're watching? Finally, you might not be able to get an opponent. Fear not, because I've created not one, but 2 really interesting ways to play Hextraction solo: Monkey Fight and Puzzle Mode. This video is running a little too long, so I'll direct you to playhextraction.com to read those rules. Maybe I'll explain them in a future video. You know what else is coming in the near future? Open Sauce, sort of Maker Faire VidCon mashup in San Francisco in the middle of this very July. Electro Boom and William Osman are also going, and I'm going to be accepting challenges and bringing bags of special tiles to trade. Visit playhextraction.com to read the docs, search things.com to find more tiles, and check the description for links to everything I showed off today. While you're down there, remember to hit subscribe for more videos, more projects, and more videos about projects. Hextraction is free and open source, including commercial use. I can get away with giving it away because of Voidstar Labs patrons. Folks like lab scientist Ragnarocker, Chris, and Dean Bressler are the ones who make these balls so shiny. If you'd like to support my so-called work, head to patreon.com/Zack Freedman. You know who really spins my bearings? Our collaborators. These exemplars of polite society include Schleppy the Schwagster, Eda the iPie, The Suits Ruined Our Fun, Dysfunctional Potato, Muonic, Microwave, Bitrot, Castor the Catboy, SXP, I'm literally only paying this so some dumb kid might get interested in STEM, The Benevolent Misanthrope, Illusion, The Rounder of Nuts, The Final Disassembler, Keep to Yourself, Moonkin, Andrew Smith, Turner Zay, and What the Chuck. I've hidden their names somewhere in this project. Maybe you'll turn them up. Hextraction is a silly, silly game, but nowhere as silly as our lab assistant supporters. These hegemons of hexagons are Big Bob's Gaming, Burnduck 3, Kink Shaming Walrus, Jason, Craft Computing, Ryan Guler, One Sleeve, Bob Dobbington, Stormby Design, Brad Cox, Tegan the Transpilot from the PNW wants to give you big hugs, Juicy Legend, Drinker of Juicy Legendary Fruits, Bill Schooler, Jessica Mowerhand, Trump did nothing wrong, Trump did everything wrong, River, Accidental Breaker of Electronics and Supreme Body of Water, Protagonist, My Dog is a Bear, Bob Forbes, Cody, Vagelli, Cross-Threading is just free Loctite, Jesus Christ dude, seek help, Sebastian Safari, Sharia Coleslaw, Nova Ren, RJ Dipcord, Bum Tickly 69, Topher, Good Suck, Jason Terrian, Measure Once, Cut Twice, Reglue, Cut Again, Michael Roche, Eval Bunny, The Antifa. Visit omaha3dprints.com for all your 3D printed RPG product needs, Scratchfinger, Talon Democratic Socialist, and a pretty righteous dude Zack, Period Clots, John Marler, The Monk, Vicarious Nerdgasms, Jan Pavo 2137, Tutankhamun, the Cuttlefish. My husband watches this so hi Urch, Jamie, Oretnus Nirb, Sunburnt Cat, the lizards are watching Zack, Varka, Amanishi, Trans Rights, Reagan says, where are the bees in Terabang? So some of them got contaminated in the flood and Millie chewed on a few more. All that's left is the B team. Quality Doggo, Pussy Nugget, Micah, I missed my chance to make my brother say silly things, Freedman, SKL, Powerful CCH, 603, Doom Crew Inc., Beth, Kermit the OG Frog, Rusty Flute, Danny Devoid of Life, Aponatratza, Zundo Wielder of Iron, Heater of Shrink, DBD, Good Lady Nat, Queen of Lemons, Victor of the Great Citrus Wars, John Loves Jen, Steven 6 foot, 6 figure, 6-pack Schulte, Cullen J. Webb suggests that maybe universal healthcare should come to America even, the whole thing doesn't fit in one screen, even if it means privatized healthcare creates fewer up, Brian Wolf Schulte, Zack Cats, Rinri, Elite Giant, Zenforian, I am working on every Resident video and be out next week, I promise. Zap, Quantumly Tangled, the back of Agent 47's neck, jobs for the homeless. Wait, I can say hand, and I can say job, but I can't say job? Dead Beef, Iron Rain, Dennis Kempin, Travis Hippaw, Eddie, Onyx Plague, Burnett, Callsign Carrot, Entropy isn't what it used to be, Dax Dastardly, Seek Seth Checks, Circle Zero, Roger Pinkham of the Great Star Theater, Dr. Mrs. the Mirrorman, Lydia K, Adam Birch, Nathan Johnson, Brian Cofford, Big Bird Tommy What Goes Bump in the Night, General Buck Targetson, Cliff Henning, Boulder Creek Yard James, Sir Jack Cooper, the Second Wilder Frying Pan, Maya Nasal Spray, Ashley Coleman, 6A, 6F, 65, 6E75, Socks McGox, Sticks Like the River Not the Band, K Panic Dempsters, Terry Dawson, Incognito, I Inspire the Next Layers YouTube channel, so you guys should check it out. Mike Kelly, Brad Stormer, Carlos Dubin, Kevin DeGraff, Karanamon Not a Digimon, Scroto Saggins, Granville Schmidt, Aaron Steers, Cameron Ogletree, Bloop Robot Words, One Handful of Beans, Max Lux says you're too hard on yourself, love yourself, idiot, Zack, Cindy Lauman, the upstairs neighbor's water heater, Bootsy von Popestein, Michael, but seriously, ladies, gentlemen, cyborgs, every name I just read out loud is fake. Seriously, on with the real subscribers, Acorn, Matthew Arrington, and Samuel Roosh. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you, your tiles, and your shiny, shiny balls in the future.